Sometimes you know something is coming. You can smell it coming. And it's like a rainstorm. Sometimes you can just feel it in your bones and you know that it's coming. A short while ago, the Star Citizen community got a bit of a preview of this storm. Now, you may remember this ship, the Prowler. And you know that it has become a bit of a meme on this channel for various reasons, but recently I did a video on the Prowler. Well, not all that recently, maybe about 6-7 months ago. It's hard to keep track. But for a brief instant, the Prowler became the dominant fighter in the Star Citizen universe. Was it more maneuverable than any other ship in the game? No, not particularly. Was it stealthier than every ship in the game? No, not particularly. But it had that commanding one-hit bad boy firepower that would just shut somebody down before they had a chance to react. And that's what kind of gave it its reputation. But CIG stepped in. They stamped down on that thing and said, oh no, there's no way a troop dropship is going to be the best fighter in the game. And they took the edge off of it. And some of the owners were a little bit displeased. Some people were like, praised it and like, good. It was messing with the balance of things. It was messing with the reality of what Star Citizen is supposed to be. But what people like that especially don't particularly realize is that change that was heralded by the Prowler is coming, and it's going to be a bit of an eye-opener for some people out there. It is going to be a bit of a shocker. What am I talking about? Well, there's another ship that people may not be thinking all that highly of. They may think it's a little bit of a meme ship because it's been around for so long, and even in its current iteration, let's face it, there's still some work to be done. But we're talking about the Constellation. Now, for years in Star Citizen, the Constellation has been an unfortunate ship, and it has been the butt of many, many jokes, some of which I have told. It does, flying it is a lot like trying to help a drunk girl down a flight of stairs. If you've been in that situation, you know how pertinent it is to this particular ship. But this ship is changing. This ship is actually getting a very big change in the not too distant future. In fact, frankly, in the immediate future. For the first time ever, it is going to have access to and be able to carry its snub fighter along with it. Now consider the firepower of the ship. Now, of course, we talked about the Prowler in the beginning, but consider the firepower of the Constellation. Going beyond SCM speed, the Constellation is not a slow ship. And with the Constellation, you have, we'll use the Andromeda as an example because there's a broad swath of constellations. But you have 4 gimbaled size 4 guns. Now you can up that to 4 fixed size 5 guns. Not to mention a plethora of missiles that are in that ship as well. And you have 2 turrets, both sporting 2 size 2 guns. So you've actually got quite an extensive amount of firepower. Now, think about it. You're stepping into the Star Citizen universe as a singular pilot. Now you have this snub fighter that can run interference for you. You have a buttload of missiles. You have 2 defensive turrets. You've got the guns. Consider the ships that are out there in the Star Citizen universe. Think about what the Prowler did with just guns that were just a notch overpowered. And think about the firepower that you're now carrying with you and the ability to take a snub fighter to run interference for you. Think about what that ship can do, because things like operating turrets or operating a snub fighter, these are things that NPCs do in the universe already. And if you happen to have access to NPCs, or if you plan to, simply go to a station and hire NPCs to run with you on your ship, most of the combat duties that you would need them to take over are combat duties that the NPCs in Star Citizen have already shown a capability to handle. And they're not the greatest, but there's still nothing to sneeze at. So now all this additional firepower that comes with this ship is now coming online. You think about getting stuck into combat in the Star Citizen universe, you think about your Constellation right now, it's kind of hit or miss, but what happens when you drive that speed up? And I'm not just talking about, going at full SCM speed, but I'm talking about just dropping the hammer and running with it. What happens if you decouple that ship? What's going to happen to a fighter or any light ship that is going to try and chase you now that you've got all your turrets up and online, now that you've got that snub fighter out running interference for you? How does that change the equation in your mind? What do you picture now being the result as a single player pilot? Kind of changes the equation a little bit, doesn't it? We're now moving into an era in Star Citizen that, we've talked about before, but we've always talked about it in the theoretical sense, but now it is starting to manifest in the practical. You think about the Redeemer, some people like it, some people don't. There's a whole friggin' story behind it, but really now, years later, who cares? The point of it is, look at all that firepower. Think about you as a singular pilot. Once again, you get a couple NPCs to man those turrets. Maybe you can slave them even to pilot control. We don't know. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Think about all that firepower. You think about somebody outside of a station these days, waiting around, wanting to get into a dogfight and wanting to tussle with somebody, and then this thing comes screaming down on them at 800 meters a second, maybe 700. That pilot who's out there looking for a dogfight, he, from the beginning of that engagement to the end of that engagement, unless he just dives right into a hangar right away, he's got to be continuously lucky to survive that engagement. But the pilot of the Redeemer only has to get lucky maybe once or twice. Land a couple of hits with all those guns, those are going to be some pretty devastating hits for your light or your medium fighters. Freelancer misses have been around doing this for a while now. And, they do get some pretty big hits in there. They come in with all those guns. They're not the biggest guns, let's be real. They're not. But they also come with a swarm of missiles. And quite a few players out there have fallen prey to this. But once again, this is a ship that's not even reached its full potential. What happens when that rear turret is manned? What happens when the Freelancer pilots just keep taking runs at people and stop trying to make one run and then get into a bit of a turn fight with a fighter and lose? What happens when they start to figure that out? What happens when they start to piece all of that together? It's going to get pretty interesting. Now, in a traditional atmospheric flight model, you could always count on these ships being a little bit slower and a little bit cumbersome, but in 6 Degrees of Freedom, what happens when something bigger with a hell of a lot more firepower comes bearing down on you? It doesn't have aerodynamics to worry about. It can just decouple and it can just pick a line, draw that line at 700, 800 meters a second, decouple, and just follow you. Just trace its guns right across you with autocannons. Think about it. This ship right here, dialed up to its max, you have 4 fixed size 5s and 2 fixed size 4s. Now you can take that down to gimbaled guns if you want, make them auto gimbals, no problem. But think about all that firepower screaming down on you. Not only that, think about, we're going to be at an era where those turrets are all going to be manned. They may not be manned by players, they may be manned by NPCs, but these are going to become the new single-player ships in Star Citizen. There are people out there who still haven't figured it out yet, but the game, we are at that watershed moment where things are going to change. We are now starting to cross that threshold. There's a lot of Connie pilots right now who are breathing a huge sigh of relief, and they're thinking, finally, I love the Connie. I can't wait to take the Connie out, and this is going to make the Connie even better. And you know what? The truth of it is this is only the beginning. We don't have NPC manned turrets yet. We don't have NPC manned snub fighters yet, but that is coming. And there's a lot of these ships that are going to benefit quite strongly from that. These ships that have been flying around the Star Citizen universe for the last 2, 3, maybe even 4 years have been flying around with their arms tied behind their back. But the truth is, there's nowhere left to go but up.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.